2022, a good year for some, a bad year for others. However, today, let's look at your player who had the best 2022. First up, AFC, Bournemouth, Jordan Zamora. And for me, this is because although he made quite a few appearances in the Championship last season, that appeared to be towards the end of the season. And now this season, he's fully broken into the team, became the starting left back for a Premier League club. Coming through the academy, it's just a great achievement for him, and considering Bournemouth got promoted as well with him playing, and they've had some really good results in the Premier League. He's got himself an assist. He's done a good job for himself. Next up then is Arsenal, and I've gone for Gabriel Martinelli. I mean, there's so many players you could pick from Arsenal, and I've gone for Martinelli because he's truly cemented his place in the starting 11 now, and he's just getting better and better every game he plays, and he even got in Brazil's World Cup squad, although admittedly not getting too many minutes. He was still there, he was deemed good enough to go. Next up then is Aston Villa, and Emi Martinez, simple enough. He won the World Cup. Club season, like everyone for Villa, hasn't been brilliant in the last 2 years, but he won the World Cup with Lionel Messi. I think that's enough. Next up then is Brentford, and for me it's Rico Henry, and this is because when Brentford got promoted the first time, I feel like people would have had some doubts, some hesitations about Rico Henry, but he's proved them wrong and been a really good left back, and arguably one of Brentford's best players this season anyway. Next up then is Brighton, another Argentine, Alexis McAllister. He won the World Cup with Lionel Messi, was actually one of Argentina's best players, and towards the end of last season, and especially the start to this season, he's proved himself as one of the league's best players, at least in that sort of mid-table area. Brighton are. He's definitely one of the best players there as well, and could easily have a big move in his future. Next team then is Chelsea, and for me it's going to be Kepa Arrizabalaga, a goalkeeper that was once disgraced for the ridiculous incident in the Carabao Cup, and back then also making quite a few errors in his play, but now he's, after being already replaced by Edouard Mendy, he's now replaced Edouard Mendy himself. He's just looking so much better than he once was on form. He's clearly put in the work, the dedication, and it's showing for him, and this season he's arguably been one of the best keepers in the league. He has genuinely been a good player, which never thought I'd be saying. Fair play to him. Next team then is Crystal Palace, and the obvious one could be Zaha. He's added even more end product to his game this season. I'm going to go for Mikel Olise, finally getting a starting place in that Palace team and sort of showing what he can do, and maybe even the heir to Zaha at Palace, who looks like he might leave very soon. Next up is Everton, and I've gone for Anthony Gordon. I mean, Everton, they haven't had too much to be happy about, really. And Anthony Gordon, he's a young lad who started getting in the team. Not too much more he can do. Started adding a bit of end product this season that he didn't have last season, so fair play to him, although there's not really too much good going on at Everton at the moment. Next up then is Fulham, and I've gone for Alexander Mitrovic, simply because he had his ridiculous Championship goal-scoring record, and he started the Premier League really well, although didn't have the best World Cup, but that was Serbia as a whole, not just him, so I believe he got a goal, maybe two in the group stage, so alright tournament for him, but he has been on fire in both the Championship especially, but also the Premier League, so a good 2022 for Mitrovic. Next up then is Leeds, and I've gone for Crysencio Somerville, the young man. I mean, he started making more and more sub appearances, featuring a starter in the Cups towards the end of last season, and he didn't quite look like he had the end product or maybe just the overall quality to be a Premier League player, but this season he's started getting in the team more as a striker, sometimes on the wing, sometimes a bit behind a striker, and he has just added that bit of quality, bit of end product to his game, and arguably being Leeds' best player, and he's had some real crucial goals and assists. So Leeds, Crysencio Somerville has been a revelation for them, and a good 2022 for him as a player. Next up then is Leicester, and another team in 2022 that don't have too much to celebrate, but I've gone for James Maddison. He managed to get himself on the World Cup plane, and he's also had a brilliant start to the 2022-2023 season, as well as, despite being out of favour in the last season, he is still one of Leicester's best players, arguably the best player they have. Next up then is Liverpool, and I know Liverpool pushed all the way to 1 point away from City and the Champions League final, but I'm almost ignoring that because this second half of the year, the new season, has been that poor really, and this is almost recency bias, but I'm going to go with Stefan Bajcetic. Why not? He's a young lad, he started getting in the team, making some appearances, getting some minutes, and even got his first Premier League goal. So I know there's probably better Liverpool players who had a really good start of the year, but this second half of the year has been poor, so I might as well go for a young lad who's getting himself in the team. Next up then, Manchester City, and obvious one, he's only been in the league half a season, but Erling Haaland, it was most likely going to be De Bruyne, but he had that awful World Cup with Belgium, so just go for Haaland. He's got a ridiculous number of goals. He would have already won the Golden Boot in quite a few seasons. So Erling Haaland, great 2022. So he was also had a pretty good second half of the season with Dortmund as well, despite a couple injuries here and there. Next up then, Man United, and it was either Casemiro, because he won a lot with Real Madrid at the start of the year, but at United, maybe a bit of a shaky start, but really coming into his own at the club now after he's now adapted to playing there. Definitely a really good player. I'm going for Christian Eriksen because he was brought in to Brentford in January and absolutely changed them. They were a struggling dressing room at the time, but then projected them to end up finishing 13th. Great player he was for them, and now he's got his move to United and he scored his first United goal, being one of United's best players, and all that after the Euro 2020 incident. Just fair play to him. It's been a great year for Christian Eriksen. Next up then is Newcastle, and there's got to be one man, Miguel Almiron. I just butchered Miguel somehow. I did it again. I apologise for that. But what a 2022 he's had, specifically the start to the 2022-2023 season where he's been on fire. 9 goals, 1 assist and 16 appearances. That is insane for a man that had like 9 goals in the entire rest of his Premier League career before this. And he's just been a revelation under Eddie Howe and had a brilliant 2022 for himself. Next team, Nottingham Forest, and I've gone for Brennan Johnson, and he was a key part of Nottingham Forest getting promoted, and he's just been a good young player, getting minutes, getting game time, getting some goals as well. Like I said, very crucial for Nottingham Forest promotion, and he's arguably been their best player in the Premier League so far, although a bit wasteful with his chances at times, but still a good 2022 for a young player starting to prove himself in the footballing world. Next team then, Southampton. For me, it's going to be Joe Aribo. Obviously got to the UEFA Europa League final with Rangers, which was a massive achievement. He was one of their best, if not the best player, and now Southampton, I still feel like he's got to be one of Southampton's best, and he's just been like electric at times for them in a really struggling team. Although for Southampton, James Ward-Prowse is also an option. Nearly got himself on the England plane, and he's just been solid. Southampton, a consistent former, and he's closing in on David Beckham's free kick, so James Ward-Prowse could have been another option as well. West Ham then, gone for Ben Johnson, another team that doesn't have too much to be happy about in 2022 after a brilliant season before this, but dropped off last season. This season they're looking really poor, but Ben Johnson is a young player starting to get himself in the team a bit more, and although he did get rinsed by Haaland on the first day of the season, it's Erling Haaland, what do you expect? Still been a pretty good player so far. Finally then, Wolves, another team that has had nothing to be happy about in 2022. Really, it's been a horrid time for Wolves, and I'm going to go with, I wanted to say nobody, but if I had to put someone, Hwang Hee-chan, because he did have a decent World Cup with South Korea and is most of the time Wolves' most dangerous looking player. Anyway, that is who I think your club's player who had the best 2022 was. I'm going to make a video on who had the worst 2022, and if you like this video, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.